Still got that weird twitch going on, guys. I don't know what that's from. The only time my eyes had this twitchy thing going on is usually from anxiety. Like, I don't have anything super anxiety going on in my life right now. It's kind of a weird thing. That or is like impending doom. What's going on? Stress from something. Actually causing me to... College is like, you know, due dates. Even then, towards the end of college, there wasn't really anything that really did that, except for I had this one class where over the course of the semester, we had to write 10 2,000 word, was it 2,000 or 10,000? No, it was 10 2,000 word essays on about 1,000 page books we had to read. Yeah, well, not all of them were 1,000 pages. Some of them were like 200, anywhere from 200 to 1,000 words or 1,000 pages. Anyways, I had to write essays on each one of them, basically summarizing the book in about 2,000 words. And that's pretty fucking tough. You can write a synopsis, you know, for like, you know, like 500 or 1,000 words. Writing 2,000 word synopsis on 1,000 page books. And a 2,000 word synopsis on a 1,000 page book. Not 2,000 page book on 1,000 page book. Anyways, 2,000 words on a 1,000 page book. And those things, like, cause I'm pro, like, I like doing my works in stint, just like every good procrastinating college student. And those I basically saved until like the last 2 weeks before I had to turn them in, and basically hammered them out. And the way the books worked is they got drier and drier the further you went into them. So in order to actually get an A, you had to do 10 2,000 page books, and going to class was basically worthless. All you did is sit up there and lectured and just random shit that didn't even matter. It's like watching my podcast, only it's a tenured professor who basically doesn't actually talk about his work. It just fucking... I basically stopped attending, and it was one of these kind of weird things. Is like he was late for class one day, and he passed me in the hallway because I was in the psychology department talking to one of the professors. He passed me, and he said, "Shouldn't you be in class right now?" Like, oh yeah, like he thought I was absent for some, like he made up some sort of reason why I was absent in his head, even though basically our grade for that class had no bearing whatsoever on written exams or even attending class. Like that was the only class that I willfully didn't go to because I didn't learn anything in the actual lectures. I didn't learn a single goddamn thing in the lectures. And like he made it sound like I was missing out on something, or like it was bad that I wasn't attending. But like there's no reason to attend the classes. And nowadays, you can't, like, most classes have attendance, and even back then when I was in college, like, when I graduated 2010, so even that's almost 10 years ago. That's 10 years ago I was in college, guys. That's insane. And even then, that's actually kind of later than normal college, because I went back to college after I was, like, in my 20s. I went back late 20s to finish my degree. But it was the weirdest fucking thing, because he thought that he was actually teaching something meaningful when he was in class, and he didn't discuss the books that we were on. He didn't discuss any of the material that we're on. Like, he didn't do anything. It was just fucking random shit. I went to class for about 2 weeks before I stopped attending it, and, like, during that time, there was not a single goddamn thing that went on. Lo and behold, at the end of the semester, the funny thing is, if you attended it, he sent out no emails, but if you attended the classes, you figure out that basically he said that you don't need to write all the essays. I ended up writing 8 because I couldn't get through the last 2 books. It was fucking horrible. It was horrible. I couldn't get through the last 2 books, so I only wrote 8 out of the 10 essays, which should have been equivalent of a B. Basically, how I structured my scheduling in college was basically I aimed for a grade, and depending on the workload would determine how hard I studied for that class. Some classes I would willfully decide to get a C in the class if I thought the workload was too much. Basically managing my time. So I wouldn't actually try to get a good grade. Which worked out beautifully for all my classes, and I had time left over. Is a great way to manage my time, is just deciding what kind of grade I want depending on the workloads in the class, and then go for them, also depending on how meaningful I thought the material was. Anyways, at the time I actually enjoyed reading books. I learned to enjoy reading like technical material in college, and that class made me hate reading technical material. Fucking made me hate it. The books that he picked out were so fucking dry. At the end, like, they started out pretty good, and then they just got more and more fucking boring. And at the end, they're like the book number 8 that I read. I remember I couldn't even figure out what the fuck the book was even about. Like, it had an obscure title, and I couldn't figure out any idea of what the book was actually about. Like, what it was trying to convey. It was just like words. It was like gibberish on a page, and it didn't even make sense. Like, I don't know if it was because I read so many books at the time, which could have been the case. Like, I was just suffering overload. But like the 2 last books, like, didn't make sense. They didn't even, like, I don't even know what I was reading, to be perfectly honest. They're psychology books, and they're like nothing. It wasn't like it wasn't research experiments or anything. It was just like random gibberish. It was like someone's autobiography, and it made no sense. I didn't even know what they're talking about, and which makes it incredibly difficult to actually write an essay on it, because you have no idea how to interpret the information that you're getting. And I just remember reading those books and thinking how fucking worthless this is that I'm reading. It was just like the class just didn't fucking matter. Nothing mattered in the fucking book, and I still had to keep reading it, and I had to internalize it so I could write a paper on it. It's almost like torture. It was fucking terrible. It was terrible. And of course, lo and behold, I did learn that was a gatekeeping class. Obviously, I didn't need to write. Even I think at the end of the semester, you only need to write 5 of the papers, and I wrote 8 to get an A. You only need to write 5. If I attended class, I would have known that. But class was a complete fucking waste of my time. So I'm still almost not sore about that trade-off, simply because the class was so worthless to attend to. Anyways, the class was a gatekeeping class. It was a class that everyone had to attend to get a psychology degree. It was a required course, and it was like Psychology, History, and Systems was the name of it. And it was like a bunch of different ways psychology over the years and how it developed and evolved, and different takes on psychology. Kind of interesting shit. At first, interesting shit. It was a gatekeeping class, meaning that's a class that was designed to make people drop out because it was extremely difficult to get a good grade in it. I did. And that wasn't really, that just made me feel bad about going to the class because it was worthless. The one class I did hate after taking it, because the teacher was a complete fucking moron. I don't have many of these because, you know, I'm pretty leeway. People have their own teaching methods, you know, it's just like podcasts. People have their own ways. Some are boob streamers, some are, you know, inquisitive, some are informational, some are entertainment, some are funny, you know, some are kind of like, look at me, I'm so alpha, you should try and project me onto you so you feel better about your life, so you go around being alpha sort of shit on Twitch. You know, everyone's a beta cuckboy, whatever. Oh, the whole alpha beta thing on Twitch is just fucking like straight out of high school. That's been around on Twitch forever, and it's still, I don't know. Anyways, I mean, that basically stems straight from the whole Lord of the Flies, Hokage, I'm gonna be the Hokage, you know, Pirate King bullshit. So it's, anyways, the only class that I really despised taking in college, well, besides some courses I just hated because I didn't really like the material, which has nothing to do with the professor, was a biology course. It was a Bio 101 class that I took, and a Bio 111 class, and it was biology, plants, and people. And the teacher was new. This was her second year teaching, and she was horrible, absolutely horrible. Like, not so bad about teaching the material, but like what she expected you to learn was horrible. Like her class, her guide outline. So she had 3 things. She had 3 things, 3 parts of our grade, 30, 30, 30, 33, 33, 33% of our grade were made up of these 3 things. One was community involvement, which was retarded, which involved going out into the community and doing community things, and basically is like forced labor. Basically, you just go out and you work with some people doing community projects. Basically, almost nothing to do with her class. No one did it. We'll get to that in a second. I did it. I definitely did it. No one did it. Almost no one did it, I should say. The other one was memorizing about 110 different plants and one final exam where you basically have to memorize the plants, because in her time as a biology student, her professor made her memorize plants, and she thought that was a great thing that helped her out immensely. Obviously, she's a biology major, and she's doing this as a teacher, So maybe it helped her out because basically she's a biology teacher. Anyways, fucking worthless waste of my time. Because plants are, unless you're really, really into plants, they're very difficult to actually pick apart when you start getting down to different subspecies. I forgot what they call them. The epidemiology of plants. It's just, it becomes really, very difficult to discern between different plants. Basically worthless for me as a psychology student, but I needed the class. And the other one was, of course, in-class testing, which included, just like midterm finals. Midterm finals, I think there's 3 different tests throughout the semester, which I did very well on. I did, like, B average on there. And then I did the community involvement, which should have also, basically, it was just, like, free points, basically, at that point. And then the third one was that god-awful test, which I failed. I got, like, 30% on the test. It was horrible. Anyways, I factored that in. As I mentioned before, I plan how I studied for classes based around the time commitment, relevancy of the material, and like how much of a fuck I gave about the class, to be perfectly honest. How much time it took to deal with the material. Basically, the amount of time it took me. Basically, learning 110 different plants, fucking worthless to me and my degree, and anything in life, because I really have no interest whatsoever. Like, it wasn't even, like, survival plants, what you can eat in the wild or anything. It was really fucking stupid. It was just, like, a bunch of random plants that we had to memorize. Anyways, did not do that, obviously, which is why I failed the test. I expected that. So I planned it out where I'd have a C average in the class. I would have a C average in the class. And what she did at the end of the fucking semester, she must have told someone, mentioned it in class. I must not have been there or something at some point. But, like, the last week of the class... No, she didn't mention it in class. It's just, like, the last 2 weeks of class where basically everything is said and done. She took out the community involvement. And the way this worked was she didn't accredit everyone with the community involvement. She just cropped the community involvement. So basically now you have 2 aspects that are 50-50. And that kind of fucks things up. Yeah, that really fucks things up. And the reason this didn't turn into an issue, I would have went to the head of the department at this point, because the class was so fucked up. And I already did that with the English professor that was overly obtuse and hard, just because he could. Like just over the top with just, he didn't like the way you write, so then he would just grade you poorly. English classes are kind of their own shitstorm of just teachers just do whatever the fuck they want because they can, sort of thing. Anyways... But what she did was, instead of being 33, 33, 33, it's now 50-50. And this one I flunked, and this one I got a B in. So basically, I would have actually flunked the class, but I think she felt sorry for me. This is the one class. This is on my senior year, by the way. Not my senior year. I was a super senior. So this is on my last semester before I graduated. This is this one class that basically fucked me because she changed the syllabus, which teachers can't do, by the way. They can't just go and outright change the syllabus, especially in the last 2 weeks of the course. She can't go and do that. But she did it anyways. And, well, they can. I should preface it. They definitely can do that. But that's like fighting words. That is definitely fighting words right there. And she went and changed the syllabus. She's just a fucking bitch, and she changed it. Anyways, it was in the last 2 weeks of the course, and basically everything was said and done. And the whole reason I never went to the department head about this was because she gave me a D- in the class, which is passing, instead of failing me. And so I flunked out in my first couple years, first year and a half of college. I flunked out of college because I didn't know what I was there for, and I didn't want to be there, and a lot of bad things. Basically, did sort of poor on my second semester. Absolutely bombed my third semester. And fourth semester, I tried to pick things up, but it was too late. Anyways, like when I went back to college in 2000, I don't know, when I was 26. When I went back to college when I was like 26 to finish things off, 27 to finish things off, I basically went back with a vengeance, so to speak, and I basically got A's and B's in like all my courses and all my fucking stuff, except for a couple classes, and that was one of them on my transcript. Except for a couple classes, I got basically A's and B's in all my classes, because it's just, memorization is actually relatively easy once you get it down pat, and it's just basically internalizing and just spitting it back out. And then you get brownie points if you just do it in a way that appeals to the professor, the teacher. But anyways, this fuck went and actually this could have held me back an entire year, like an entire semester in college, which is expensive as shit. Where she changed the syllabus and basically ended up, I would have failed the course. I actually calculated all my points. I would have failed the course if she didn't give me a D-, because they must have actually went to her. Like, because there's an auditor at the end of the semester, or at the end of your course in college. You go through a couple different checkpoints where people just go over your course history and make sure you can actually get a degree and stuff. And they must have actually went to her and asked her if, like, why I'm failing the class or something, or if what's going on with it, because I got a D- in the class. Maybe she felt bad for me or something. And I looked at it, I saw it after, like, I heard about this, I saw it, and I was like, what the fuck sort of shit going on here? Like, what the fuck's going on here? And it turned out she basically, instead of crediting everyone with points, which is what you're supposed to do as a teacher, if you decide to remove something from your syllabus, you basically just give people points for that. Because then, you know, it's like, that's your fault. That's your fault as a teacher, as a professor, for doing things wrong in the first place. You always give the benefit to the students. You never take it away from the students, because that leads to a bad, you know, like they aren't playing by their own rules sort of shit. Anyways, like I said, she was a new professor, and I guess she felt as though no one did it, so no one should really get credit for it, which isn't true. I was there at a couple community things with a couple people in classes, maybe like 10 people, and she had like 5 different classes, 20 people, five different classes, which is why she removed it from her syllabus at the end of the semester. Anyways, this fucking bitch decided she was just going to axe one of the things. So basically I failed the class, but she ended up giving me a passing grade anyways. So it's like in my return to college and for my bachelor's, I basically only have like 1 D. I think I don't even have any C's. It's just 1 D-, and it's in that fucking class. Plants and biology with the dumb bitch dumblefuck professor that didn't plan things out appropriately, and then she just axed it. She just fucking axed it, and I totally would have went to the department head at the end of that. It still kind of blows my mind that she did that. I still remember that because I looked at it, I was like, what the fuck's going on here, sort of thing. Yeah, it was like in the last 2 weeks in an email she mentioned it, and apparently like I didn't read the email or something, or thoroughly read the email, and like I saw it on my, like, at the end there, the grade points where it is just a dash where the community involvement was supposed to be, and it's just like, what's going on here? Anyways, funny shit, guys. D-, fucking D-. But yeah, everyone should go to school as long as you can, guys. Go to school as far as you can, as long as you can. It's, despite what people think, it's not just a piece of paper. I highly, highly believe that. If you're capable of going to college and actually becoming a well-educated individual, proficient in an area of expertise, like, that should actually be something that, like, we as a society should be paying for. I personally believe that because you're basically funding people to be doctors and scientists, and that's kind of a big deal. That's kind of, if you have the grades, support it. If you have the grades to support it, you should be allowed to go to college for basically as long as possible, which is kind of what happens in, like, Germany, for instance. They have apprenticeship, and then they have, like, education. They have 2 different, basically, roles that you go into. Colleges, or not colleges, schools throughout the, not really a technical school, I forgot what it's called, but in Germany, basically, they have 2 different routes you go on. One is education, and the other is, like, application, which is, like, blue-collar work, like an electrician, plumbing, you know, actual hands-on application. You split off, it's like in 12 years old or something like that. You're really young when it happens. And basically, if you ever want to change between these 2 different routes, it's actually really, really difficult to do so. But anyways, like, they have these 2 different routes, and you basically have to go one or the other, and you can go into college in, like, Germany, and that's, I believe it gets paid for and shit like that, because basically you're bettering society, and I'm actually a big believer in bettering society, which is weird when you have all these people that just hate on people for getting things for free in America and shit like that. And, like, when you're talking about people going to school, that's like, you have a really, like, if you don't have an educated population, guys, that hurts. That fucking hurts your country a lot. Like, a fuck ton. Like, you lose out on, like, on skilled labor, not like someone that can fucking work in a factory and just like push boxes around. Like, you need people to make what's in the boxes, and that becomes increasingly difficult when you don't have a qualified, populace to actually do the work. So, like, make robots, make fucking computers, make what's in your box right now while you're watching me. That sort of shit. Regardless of where it's made in China, people have to design it, people have to make it. Of course, there's people that take care of you when you're older. There's all different sorts of jobs in the world, and education is definitely a big part of that. It's pretty ridiculous how big of an impact education makes on the populace if you just decide that people can't go to high school anymore. Why would we pay to have your kids go to school, sort of shit? That's basically the ideology in the U.S. right now. It has been for probably the last 2 decades. Like, why would we pay for your shit? It's kind of what it comes down to. Despite the fact, like, they wake up and they drive on the roads every day, sort of thing, and there's no way a functioning highway system would actually work in the U.S. if everyone didn't pay for it. Just like fire prevention, any of the services. My house isn't burned down. Why would I pay for it, sort of thing? Things you need: snow removal, infrastructure, taking care of really any water, for instance, almost always owned by your city in the U.S. Depends on where you are, as garbage services are also owned by the city. That depends. I've definitely seen licensed areas in the U.S. like where they actually license out a private service to do it. So, weird stuff, guys. U.S. is very weird, very, very weird. Anyways, guys, good morning. Today we're going to do Apex Legends off of the fucking rant. I do want to rant about something for Apex Legends. I think Apex Legends is actually on a downhill slide right now. In case you guys missed it, we've been covering this, but Apex Legends is on Twitch, for instance, which isn't the end-all be-all or viewership, but it is on a downhill trend. Fortnite is not going to die. Apex Legends is still new. It's been out for 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. Yeah, almost 3 weeks. On the 25th, there'll be 3 weeks. Well, they had not spoken. I ripped my hair out. Try a patch, dude. Like, there's things you can do that are, between you and killing yourself. So keep that in mind. You don't need to be a man and just take it. Oh, you have a brain tumor? Be a man. Just take it. Just take it, man. Just take it. Brr. Take it. But as I mentioned before, good for you, and I still hope that works out for you. Yeah. Apex Legends, Fortnite. Apex Legends is starting to die off. And kind of the weird thing, guys, is if you watch the bigger streamers play the game, they win too much. Is actually like they've won so much that the game has become boring for them. Be perfectly honest. Like I mentioned before, the gun balance in this game is absolutely fucking atrocious. Apex Legends gun balance, there is none. The guns are just fucking, they don't even make sense. They're just stat sticks. It's like Counter-Strike. Basically all you end up is like 2 good guns and that's it. It's the same shit. And it's showing. It's definitely showing. And basically it comes down to like they don't even need to do gameplay. Like they don't even need to do the gameplay. They just do aim. They just do like whack-a-mole. That's all they're doing is just whack-a-mole with their guns. And it actually, it's making them boring. And whenever they don't get a win, they just get really, really, really fucking angry. Like I was watching not Shroud, I was watching Summit play earlier today. And despite him winning basically like 4/5 of his game, like whenever he would lose, like he'd just freak out about it. Like it was horrible. Putting that aside, someone's viewership is also falling, but I don't put that against him. It's just a show of Apex Legends. People are just getting bored of the game, and it's because the gunplay is so horrible in the game. Like, Fortnite has had a lot of staying power, but that's because the gunplay has been kind of remotely balanced. Apex Legends gunplay is fucking terrible. It's absolutely fucking terrible. All the guns are very, very similar to each other in that they're just stat sticks, and that being said, some of them are just a lot better than other weapons. So, you end up in a scenario where basically it's just a straight up aimer, and not really much else is going on in it. And even though there are game mechanics in the game, aiming plays such a huge role in how well you do in the game that they really don't even matter. It doesn't matter how you play the game because you can aim so well. So Apex Legends, I think they hotfixed, as I mentioned yesterday when we were playing, I think they hotfixed the exploit drop, and they kind of got themselves in the corner. Like, if I was Apex Legends, just because I'm the kind of person that I am, I'd just like straight up just switch to a cone of fire model and say fuck it to everyone else that just, you're going to get an outlash from them. But it's the optimal way to go with the game. Obviously, they aren't going to do it because big companies, you know, care about publicity and all that jazz, and that's not going to fly. So basically, Apex Legends got themselves in the corner because they listened to the fucking robot Shroud, who told them to switch to a spray pattern instead of cone of fire, because that makes games so much better, Shroud. You know, it makes you better at games because you play Counter-Strike your entire life. That is true. And games have definitely, even back in the days of Counter-Strike, there were plenty of games out that had a cone of fire spray model. I talked about Raven Shield, for instance. Depending on the weapons used in Tribes, also had spray cone of fire on them. Depending on the weapons, some of them weren't, obviously, like a spin fuser. Mortars. There's a lot of Tribes weapons were inertia-based, kind of like this game, but not really. They're much heavier, meaning because you have a lot of speed and velocity when you're skiing around. So it takes into account a lot of your speed and velocity when you're moving, and that like goes into your lead time. That's a lot to do with actually hitting people. What's up, bro? A lot to do with hitting people. So quite, there's like the bird itself in Tribes is just quite a bit different than everything else. But anyways, like, just the games have evolved in like the last 2 decades, and Shroud's like, let's make this like a spray pattern, guys. This would be so much better. I really think it'd work, you know. And then they did, and now we have basically no gun differentiation. They're all basically the same, and snipers are fucking worthless. So, now Apex Legends has to figure out a way to actually add character to itself. And there's plenty of people that said, oh no, the guns are very different from each other, and oh, the classes are so different from each other, and they're all balanced, and they aren't. And the classes aren't balanced, the guns aren't balanced, they aren't all different from each other, they're all stat sticks, which is why it all basically just comes down to DPS, and if not just straight up DPS, then it goes to magazine size DPS, like the damage over time when you include reload, which is why a Spitfire shines, for instance. And it's starting to show. People are starting to get fatigued on the game because basically there's only a handful of weapons they're actually using, and the game always plays out very similar to each other. So people are starting to trickle back to Fortnite, as we can see here. Last time I looked at this a couple days ago, Apex Legends was still pulling more viewers than Fortnite, and obviously if Shroud's on, that's like 60,000 players right there, 60,000 viewers. But if you look at one of the major big streamers, like the Outliers are off, it's basically Apex Legends is starting to shrivel up and go the way of the dodo. But we'll see where it goes. There's some people that are super committed to playing the game, and I'm obviously wow, I haven't seen her since like H1Z1 days. I thought it was a guy at first. Used to have red hair. Oh, I haven't seen that name since H1Z1. Completely different. Anyways, it's going to start to fatigue, and the game category is going to start to die off, and Twitch is a lot about what's trending on Twitch right now. And Apex Legends was. And honestly, like, people, even if they're good at the game, it's not really about what you're just good at. It's not really just being good. Like, the game has to be enjoyable too, and while people said that the game's new, fresh, and enjoyable, it was new and fresh, but that wears off after a while. The new car smell is starting to wane right now. And I think probably next couple weeks are going to be vital for Apex Legends if they actually want their game to continue onward, to be perfectly honest, especially on Twitch. Where this game's going to be like next week is going to be probably a pretty big deal. Like it's still fighting with Fortnite, and the people are like, oh, Fortnite's going to die. Fortnite was never going to die, ever. It was never going to fucking die. Next week or two, like they have to capitalize on their hype they have going on right now, and a couple things they need to fix, just like outright as a matchmaker, cheating probably first and foremost, and then also the gun balance needs to be fixed. And they're already talking about releasing classes and fucking weapons and shit, and their current stuff isn't balanced. It's not remotely balanced, and because they aren't going to switch to a Cone of Fire gun balance model in the game because it just makes it bad, and all of the streamers would just bitch about how horrible the game is after, even regardless of how good it makes it. They'll just say it's worse because it's Cone of Fire now, and Cone of Fire is bad because Bloom, hashtag Bloom. There's no way to compensate for Bloom at all, like crouching or ADSing or stop moving or taking time for the crosshair to come together. No, nothing at all to compensate for Bloom, or recoil control. Nothing at all to compensate for Bloom. Bloom is just the end-all be-all of RNG and video games, no matter what, and you don't control the distribution at all. Regardless of how untrue that is, that's what people are going to be saying. So, in order to actually kind of fix the gunplay, they need to have damage drop-off, which they already added to the Havoc, but it's only in one mode. It's in the Havoc sniper mode. With the hit scan projectile has damage drop off. Only gun in the game that has damage drop off on it. Pretty sure only gun in the game that has damage drop off on it. But they can add that and people wouldn't bitch about it. But switching to a Cone of Fire is something people would bitch up a storm about. So in order to actually deal with that, they're gonna have to do get rid of their easy recoil that they have now, because right now when you fire a gun, your crosshair always pops back to the point of origin. Even if you go full auto, if you let go of the button, it always goes back to your point of origin. So basically, you're always aiming on target, regardless of where your gun is. It doesn't really leave. It's like driving around in a tank with a turret that just always follows exactly where you're aiming. The opposite of that is where they actually change it, so when your gun pops up to a new spot, that's where you're aiming. And so you always have to completely compensate, which makes you aiming much, much more difficult, which is very much akin to Cone of Fire. It's very, very akin to Cone of Fire. Obviously, there's still some downsides to it, which is why I think Cone of Fire is just completely superior to just straight-up recoil, because where you're aiming is always 100% accurate, because that's the way it works. So your first shot is always 100% accurate, and with some weapons that shouldn't be true, just because of the way the guns are designed, like a pistol, for instance. Oh wait, Wingman. What? That makes sense. Anyways, like, just the game itself isn't really honestly, like, the gunplay just honestly isn't that great. And over the next 2 weeks or so, I think it's going to be kind of a proving point on where this is. People are going to come up with all sorts of reasons of why Apex Legends is going to fail. If they don't take care of the gunplay. But it's definitely the fucking gunplay. The game is very simple, and there's only a handful of weapons that are actually viable in the game, like something that you'd use. You just drop everything else for something else that you pick up off the ground. And there aren't really gun differentiation in terms of categories like snipers, pistols, assault rifles, SMGs, shotguns. Shotguns are still kind of different, which is they're kind of their own thing, but otherwise all the guns are very similar to each other because they're 100% accurate off the hip, for instance, except for inertia inheritance. I mean, if you strafe, it'll take into account like your strafing inertia into the bullet, so the bullet will actually drift, and you have to like aim behind the target to hit off the hip. When you ADS, it's actually easier to hit the target than it is off the hip because you're moving slower, and I'm pretty sure it reduces the inertia inheritance on the projectiles, so it makes it easier to fire them. That was their compensation. That was their kind of point, to make it easier to hit your shots in easier. It makes it more difficult to hit your shots in Apex Legends. Some of the guns, however, don't really have that. Some of the guns have almost no inertia inheritance, with like the Wingman, for instance. So when you fire a shot, it's almost always dead center. Even when you're moving, strafing, jumping, it'll almost always hit dead center. It's very, very close. The projectiles themselves have very, very little inertia inheritance. So it makes it... Gun balance in Apex is just very, very difficult because they're all just stat sticks. It all comes down to DPS, and like I mentioned before, DPS with reloads. And it makes things really boring. because just like one gun. You know, you can argue for Counter-Strike being here since like, you know, 98 or whatever, but for the moral, these are like all tournaments and shit. Like most people don't even want to play or watch Counter-Strike anymore. It's like even the big streamers that used to play Counter-Strike don't play Counter-Strike anymore because it's boring. Don't want to play it. Ancient, you know, it was cool at the time and I played a lot of it and a lot of people have played a lot of it, but it's like nostalgia. It's like remembering, whereas like COD, for instance, keeps coming up even though there's only 6.7k people watching. Every time a new COD game comes out, you know, they get a new spike in people playing it, and then it fully drifts down again. But just old outdated gameplay, and Apex Legends is suffering that right now, where they aren't a Counter-Strike, and people don't want a different Counter-Strike, they just want Counter-Strike. So even if they add things to their game, like spray patterns that Counter-Strike has, and 100% accuracy and shit like that, and they make the gun mechanics a lot like Counter-Strike, people don't want to play Counter-Strike. If they wanted to play Counter-Strike, they'd play Counter-Strike. It's like, it's cool because it's Counter-Strike. It's not cool because of what the game actually is. So, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where Apex Legends goes, but definitely three things off the bat there is cheating, which is a big deal. Very easy to obtain cheats right now. Gunplay, which we just talked about, and then Matchmaker, which we've talked about before, but the most basic level, they need to split it into solo trios and squad trios. So squad trios don't face off against solo trios and vice versa. You can obviously have a group of 2 people and play in squads, but then you're going to be down a person. Like, you shouldn't ever be actually pushed into playing in squads, like against squads, because squads just fucking roll over you. Like, coordinated squads just fucking roll over everything, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. Unfortunately, a lot of this, just having just a minute amount of interaction with each other and giving a shit about each other actually goes a long way in video games, regardless of skill. It goes quite a long ways, where you just have people come to your aid. Holding W key is a big deal. But yeah, just like most basic level, and then further up from that, they can start playing games for points, where you have a squad will be around the same MMR as each other, and then each match you can have a range of people in between. So the matchmake range is much bigger, but you get more points in there. You have the opportunity for more points depending on what your squad is ranked in that match. Obviously, if you win more games, you know, you're worth more points, and obviously people are worth less points to you. Basically like a traditional matchmaker, only instead of having 2 teams, you have 20 teams in a match. Very cool. There's a lot of cool things they can do with matchmake for Apex Legends. But we'll see. Right now, as I mentioned before, Apex Legends is on the downhill slide. Fortnite basically lost a bit, but a lot of people are returning to Fortnite now after playing essentially, you know, the un-Fortnite, playing the un-Fortnite, and then realizing that, like, it just isn't that, and perfectly honest, it's just, like, it is fun, but, like, the gunplay gets very, very bland, and as I mentioned before, watching other streamers now, it's becoming pretty common that they kind of lost interest in the game, too, and they're just becoming angry. Not like your shots just disappearing because hit rate is bad, but just, like, because they got, like, you know, DP'd from 2 teams at the same time, and then they just freak out about it because it screws up their, you know, 19 win streak or something stupid. It'll be interesting to see where it goes, though. I'm not done with Apex Legends yet. I am still very much interested in the game. However, I definitely feel, and I know what's wrong with the game, and I know where it's going. I don't think Apex Legends is going to straight off die. I don't know if it's going to maintain, like, PUBG status, so PUBG's been grandfathered in. It's like Counter-Strike, where there's just people that play it even though the game's basically shitty. It's like Blackout was just a better PUBG, and for some reason it died off. There's just people that want to play because it's years now. I don't think I'd ever want to go back to PUBG. It's so slow, it's so boring, and shots just don't count. Alright guys, So tonight I messed with my internet. Two things I did differently here is I hooked up my old cable modem. Well, not old, my other cable modem. And it actually has seemingly stopped me from disconnecting, so there's that. That's good. I can maintain, looks like I can maintain a connection without disconnecting. We'll see throughout the stream. But for the most part, I think it's working out properly. We'll play a couple games here on my cable connection and then switch to my DSL connection and go from there. And not boring, it's just cheaters ruin it. Dude, the gunplay in PUBG is fucking boring as shit. There's stat sticks again. There's another game with just stat sticks. All the guns feel the same.